I've certainly ruffled some feathers along the way, but hopefully, yeah, the other piece of it is I feel like in some small way, we've made a difference for people who've, a couple of people in this industry have been able to create careers, help support their direction and their careers. And I also think on the conservation side, we raise awareness. I mean, I've been to DC a couple of times on, hill walks, and, I go in and I sit down with a legislative aide and I tell them who I am. And
that was Brian Bennett describing what keeps the Moldy Chum going strong. This is the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Are you interested in hanging out on a great Alaska trip? You can find out how to join this hosted trip with myself this coming summer to the final frontier. Go to wetflyswing.com/AK to get more details and find out if this trip is right for you. In today's episode, I talk with Brian Bennett, the founder of moldychum.com. Brian describes how the chum has evolved over the years, the 2 new podcast shows they have coming up, and how he convinced Pike Place Market to quit selling wild steelhead. So, without further ado, here's Brian Bennett. I was going to start with, obviously the Moldy Chum. That's yes. that's your baby still.
The Moldy Chum, that's right.
The Moldy Chum. So, there's a whole thing there with the Moldy Chum. We're going to dig into a bunch of that. But could you talk about just yourself and how you first got into fly fishing and talk about?
Sure.
Yeah.
You bet. So let me go way back. I'm actually a social worker by trade. I went to Salem State College and I wanted to help kids. And so that was kind of the direction I thought I was going in. And I was racing bicycles at the time. And I met some guys that kind of got me into the outdoor industry. I actually went to work for REI in the late 80s, running kind of their bike shop in their second store they opened on the East Coast. And that started this whole trajectory for me kind of in the outdoor industry. And I never fished. Like growing up, I mean, fishing for me was, hanging out on the end of the dock in Maine with my grandfather, with him and his buddies drinking brown water and dunking worms. And I never did it. I was an urban kid. And, so everything that I did that was sports wise, as I was a teenager, when I got into all this other stuff, was all kind of self-directed. Well, I ultimately ended up working for a brand, Kelty backpack brand, one of the oldest backpack brands, and been around for a long time, and was living in Colorado. And it was, I think, 1999 or 2000. And I had a really good friend who actually lived just outside of Portland. He was a guy that I met literally like on the phone through Kelty, like talking to him on the phone. He like hit me up for some sponsorship or something. And he was like, dude, you got to really get into fly fishing. And I was like, what, dude, that fishing thing, I don't get it. And he sent me a fly rod and a reel. There was an Orvis, still have it, 4-weight Orvis bat and kill rod and the matching reel. And I didn't know what I was doing. And we took a trip. We used to take customers on trips. And so we took these, bunch of guys. We went to, we were in Jackson Hole, and I remember we paddled across this lake. I think it wasn't Jenny Lake. I can't remember which one, but there's a little creek coming in. And I waited. I had my fly rod. I didn't know what I was doing. I tied on, a Royal Coachman or whatever I had in the box. And I caught a little cutthroat in this little plunge pool. And it had a profound impact on me. And I went all in. And so I literally gave up every other sport that I kind of participated in. There was a lot of them, to basically just focus 100% on fly fishing. And I think that first year that I kind of really dove in, I was probably on the water at least 150 days.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started. So I'm kind of late. I'm the classic, late to the sport kind of thing, which I think is, interesting enough, it's a trend.
Yeah, it is pretty common.
Yeah, people are kind of getting into it and, discovering, the meaningful, nature of what it is. And it, not only is it something that I just love doing, but it also, made me into the kind of the conservation minded. I was always into the environmental stuff and considered myself an environmentalist, but I got way more active once I started to fly fish and really cared about, fish and habitat that they live in. So,
and that was it with Kelty. So you were at Kelty, and then you went into Patagonia. Was that your next stop?
Yeah. So I had a brief stop at Mountainsmith between Kelty and Patagonia. I did a little marketing stint.
I've got a Mountainsmith hip pack I've had since the late '90s that I love, man. I love. It's the only Mountainsmith thing I've ever purchased, but I love it.
The tour pack, probably.
It's not the huge one. It's kind of the small little pack. Yeah.
Have some yellow bungee on it. Probably.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I did a little stint there, and then I got a job working for Patagonia as a key accounts, basically managing the REI account. So that's when I moved to Seattle.
Oh, okay.
So I was at Patagonia for the better part of 14 years.
Oh, wow.
And as part of that gig, for 2 years I took on a part-time role within the job that I had, being the Patagonia fly fishing sales manager. So that really that's where things kind of blurred, whereas fishing became more than just kind of a passion. It became kind of part of my occupation. And the Chum started in 2005.
Okay.
Actually, maybe even late 2004. And I had been doing some blogging prior to the Chum. A friend of mine, we had a blog called the Piton, which was, if you think kind of what the vibe of Moldy Chum was back in 2005, it was the same thing, but it was in the outdoor space as opposed to the fishing space. And so what happened was, I was like, I think the Drake magazine came out around that same time, and I was like, man, this is cool. It's like new school media and fly fishing, and I was like, man, why aren't I blogging? And so that's how it all started.
There you go.
The
Moldy Chum.
The Moldy Chum. That's right.
That's all. And just to clarify that, so the name, it could just quickly, we are talking chum salmon here.
Yeah. So I took a trip. So I was still living in Colorado, and I had taken a trip up here to do some, I was meeting with a customer or something, and we went fishing, and we were actually fishing, if I recall correctly, we were actually looking to catch steelhead, I think. And we were we're in a bar, and there's a bunch of guys, there's a few guys, not quite shoulder to shoulder, but some other people fishing. And I think I've hooked the bottom, and there's a guy like, and I'm like, damn it. And I go, man, I'm on the bottom. And the guy up, basically a little bit upriver, he goes, no, you didn't lift your rod, really lift it. And so I set it up, and the thing just knuckle bust, just takes off crazy. I get it in, and it's a chum salmon that's literally
Moldy.
Looks like an old piece of carpet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a mess. And the guy looks at me and he goes, man, that's one Moldy Chum.
There you go.
So that's kind of where the name came from. And the beauty of it is it's, it can be, chum, you chum up fish, you use stinky old fish to kind of, do your chumming, whatever it is. So it kind of hits on both.
Yeah, it does. And the brand name, that's why I love, the Moldy Chum, because I can't remember, when I thought of it, when I heard it first, I instantly thought of salmon. But, it just shows you the name isn't critical. I mean, my name, for example, the brand is Wet Fly Swing. In fact, I just interviewed Peter Morse, down in Australia yesterday. And,
cool.
And the first thing he said was, I don't know how good I'm going to be. I'm not that good at swinging flies and steelhead, So everybody thinks, at first, but it's just a name. I just came up with that name, the same kind of thing. And really, it's all about fly fishing. And that's kind of, the Moldy Chum is also all about fly fishing.
Yeah, primarily. I mean, we cross over into conventional occasionally, just with, but it's really more, it's not that kind of the traditional, conventional. And as a matter of fact, I had, when I was, going to Christmas Island a bunch with some friends, we were fly guys, but we made the jump over to conventional because we just found it to be a better way to fish kind of blue water and also just the experience. But I found it, the way we were doing it, it's just as technical and just as gear intensive and all of those things as you find in the fly fishing space. So I think there's some similarities as it relates to that. We'll cover that occasionally on the conventional side. But yeah, we're a fly fishing site for sure.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, cool. And what? So the Moldy Chum. For somebody who's never read it, gone onto your blog, can you talk about basically what it's all about, or maybe just describe it for somebody who's never been there?
So the original way we used to describe it was fly fishing meets the onion, and so back when we first started. there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was none of that. And so the way the site kind of rolled, it was literally almost like your Facebook timeline. It was pictures, funny pictures and memes and funny headlines. And we had the slab of the month where where could you go to see pictures of big fish? And early on at the time, a beautiful women holding fish too. And we spoofed that a lot. Like we were kind of making fun of that kind of space. So that's kind of how it all started. And so I think that that's kind of the foundationally what we're all about, because we still like to have fun. We still like to poke fun as best we can. But the site's evolved as social media has evolved. And so the kind of the traditional blog kind of role isn't as relevant anymore. So we made some modifications to the site, and while we still like to to have some fun, and we did a post around legal weed in Denver for the IFTD show. I mean, super funny. We have a series called The Chummion, which is kind of a throwback to those times when the chum met the onion, where we do these tongue-in-cheek kind of look like real news stories, but they're jokes. But we're much more thoughtful as it relates to getting conservation messages out and those things. And we were always conservation minded throughout the years, but that's really grown, and it's really one of there's three legs of the stool for the chum. One kind of being fun, one of them is being kind of conservation minded. It's really a place that we hang our hat on, and we think that we've inspired other people within the space to become more conservation minded throughout the years because of the fact that it's a legitimate way to get traction and readership and to appeal to people, and from time to time create conflict because there's different sides of whether it's climate change or hatchery fish.
Do you see traction with conservation? We talked about that a little bit on this show. That I can't remember who I was talking about, but it's come up a couple of times where like the conservation blog posts or podcasts on conservation are like the lowest read or listened to. Do you find that you get a lot of people reading your conservation stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's how you kind of package the conservation messaging, and we try to do a good job, across our social channels, where we will do a blog post. What would be
an example, say, give us a quick little topic of a conservation?
Suction dredge mining is the first one that comes to mind.
Yep.
So it's a major issue happening here. And so we did, there was they're trying to pass a bill here in Washington to basically ban the practice or make it much more difficult to get a permit to suction dredge. So, I mean, there are rivers where you can't fish for steelhead, but you can just suction dredge to your heart's content if you want to. So it doesn't make any sense.
No.
So we did a news story. Well, we posted to a news story about the legislation and the irony of the fact that you can't fish there, but you can suction dredge. We cross-referenced it on our Instagram page. And it was interesting. The engagement on that was as high as I've seen on most conservation stuff.
Huh.
You can put up a funny Photoshop picture on Facebook and get 1 million likes on it, but you do the conservation one. Yeah. And historically it's frustrating to look at that and go, what's wrong with you people? We're asking, if every one of you people that liked that funny picture of George Washington catching a shad while he was crossing the Delaware, joke that you put up on the President's Day, if every one of you people had signed this petition or had made a phone call, you'd make a difference. But that's the nature of the beast. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's not people, trying to get them to really move on stuff like that. It can be challenging. So the better you can do across those channels where it comes together, the traction is better. But you're right. It's not the sexy thing.
Have you guys ever been hit, on the politically incorrectness sort of thing over the years? Have you had anything you've done where people have kind of called you out on stuff, or it's
absolutely, for sure. Yeah. And I think, and part of that too, is sometimes it's, misinterpretations of things where humor can be taken in different ways. So I think generally, a lot of that has to do with, back in the day, the comment thing was, we didn't moderate them. We just let comments go.
Oh, right.
anything went. And people would get personal, just like trolls tend to get, to do things. And we got to the point where we had to basically shut that all down because it began to create more problems. I'd say we ran into more problems with that kind of stuff than we did with kind of taking controversial positions. I mean, when people kind of call us out on controversial positions, we're like, well, if you were a reader and you spent a lot of time with us, you kind of know where we stand on stuff.
Yeah. Well,
like there's no secret.
No, and one of the so on your page on the site you have I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically the hot chicks. You mentioned now. So what's the background there? Because when you look at that, somebody might think, well, what do they got going here? They're doing the.
Yeah, we used. I mean, no doubt, we used to do the Friday pinup. I mean, we were guilty as charged. I mean, we showed. I mean, that was back in the day, and. Crazy enough, I mean, this is more of a reflection, I think, overall about that. But Fridays were the most highly trafficked days.
And you still have the Friday pinup, don't you?
No, we don't. It's still called out as a segment down below.
And there's still a picture of a chick in a bikinis, right? Or
yeah, it's below two guys. It's below a guy in chaps, though, I think. So
yeah.
When we build out of it, like that was the real ironic thing. Like the grief we used to get most of the time was like, why aren't you showing guys? And we're like, well, if we could find pictures of guys, we probably would. And then the classic thing is when we would post a picture of a dude scantily clad fly fishing, the dudes would come out of the woodwork and call us all kinds of names.
No kidding. Oh my God.
So yeah, theoretically that tab and that bottom thing should just go away, but we're not going to hide from that history.
No.
But it's done. I mean, it's been done for 2 years now.
It's been done. How is
all the Me Too movement?
That's what I'm getting to. I mean, again, there's all of that stuff, and there's people on both sides of that too. I mean, I've heard people actually. April Vokey, you can go back to that podcast when she was on with me here, and she talked about how the Me Too movement, was a little bit. She didn't like everything that they were, going.
Well, So here's my kind of take on it is a bunch of different levels. So number one is, you look at, I mean, April interviewed Darcizzle on her podcast. I mean, I've been following Darcizzle on Instagram from when she first started out. And she's a legitimate angler. I mean, no question, but there's no question she gains traction because you're basically not wearing anything when she's fishing.
Yep.
So, and there's a whole rash of those people, and I could list them. I mean, there's tons of them. And so it's really easy to kind of dominate I call fly fishing, it's the petri dish of everything. I mean, it's hyper focused because, as you mentioned earlier when we first started on this call, is that it's really small. Everybody knows each other and all those kind of things. So it really gets magnified. And so when people are critical of sexism in fly fishing, and rightfully so, it's really like, well, sexism in society as a whole is a problem. And so, of course, it's going to be a problem, and no matter what little segment it is. And if this happens to be in fly fishing, that's the case, too.
Yeah.
And I would make the point, and people will argue with me this all day, but, leveraging your femininity around your social media presence, whether you're fully dressed or in a bikini, are fundamentally the same things. I mean, it's very different. I mean, in some ways, but essentially, you can dominate and gain traction in our little petri dish of an industry if you're attractive, no question. Yeah. And it pays off. And so, but that's just the nature of the world, I think, in general. And it's not just in sexism and fly fishing. It's like, how many times you see, social media, it's ruined fly fishing. It's like, well, I got, this just in. Social media has pretty much ruined everything.
Right.
So I think that, especially as it relates to, we get into real issues that I think, matter at a higher level, conservation, environmental issues, and all of those things as it relates to social media and the politics of all of that. I just, I quit my personal Facebook page.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just can't.
Facebook?
I can't. I don't want to give I'm tired of giving my data to billionaire frat boys.
That's right. Yeah. He's done well for himself. If that's No, it is kind of crazy. I mean, we're in a crazy world. I mean, and it's kind of the politics is crazy. It seems like everything's kind of crazy. You wonder sometimes. I mean, the Steelhead, we'll probably talk a little bit about that, but obviously runs are up and down, but there's a lot of rivers that are struggling. I did want to, stay on the Chum for just a little bit more because I don't want to miss a couple things. And, one of them, again, thinking about, you mentioned this, alluded to this a little bit, but about the evolution. I mean, how has the Chum evolved from the early days to now, and maybe just talk about how it's different?
Well, it was, strictly a labor of love early on, and I've never really leveraged it. You look at kind of how, social media or influencers kind of are able to leverage their positioning within all of that. I mean, it was never my principal, like it was never a job for me. It was something I enjoyed doing. And I mean, I think the one thing, if you look at, since 2005, I mean, we've put up 3 to 4 posts every single day.
Really?
Like we've never missed a day.
You do 3 or 4 posts a day, and these might be just photos, but they might be big blog posts. Yeah,
no, it's mainly we're content aggregators. We go out and we find cool content and we share it with the Chum Nation.
Who's finding the content? Are people writing for you? Are you doing everything?
Everything.
Really? So nobody's helping you?
Yeah, I've had a couple partners along the way.
Yeah.
But they've come and gone, and now it's and just in turn back to your question about how it's kind of evolved, is that it's become more serious for sure as it relates to, just for me personally, it's my job now, primary job.
When did it become your job?
A year ago.
Really?
So yeah, I've been doing it. I've been doing it exclusively for a year.
What was that like when it became your primary job? I mean, what does that feel like?
Well, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, I think the hard part is turning it from, what was a hobby and, after work and, sitting down with the family, maybe watching TV and have the laptop and cranking out some blog posts, taking a couple of hours to crank out blog posts. Now it's more structured and, having to try to generate money, salary, ad revenue, and all of that. And that's real now for me. So, I mean, I think as it relates to, in terms of how it's evolved, back, that you look at the engagement level that we have. So there's no question that our views are down from the heyday. So back in the heyday, we were 300 to 400,000 page views a month.
Right.
I mean, really, like really powerful. And when we kind of changed formats, and we've been through 2 evolutions. So we were originally on a TypePad platform, then we went to Squarespace, and then when we switched from Squarespace still was very much kind of the old school blog roll. We made a change to the format that we have now. We lost a fair amount of page views because you couldn't just go to the site and take it in by just looking at it. When you go, if you see something you're interested in, you have to click on it to read it.
Yep.
Or you've got to click on it to view like we do in Bennett, where if it's a video, you can look at it straight from the main page. But our engagement numbers have gone up. The time of engagement has gone up dramatically. And so the quality of that. So that's the biggest evolution, is it's not just someplace where you can kind of drop in and kind of take a look. I mean, I'll give you an example. We did a piece for Fish Pond called Inside the Mind. And what we do is basically the concept is, we talked to somebody, in this particular case it was John Lecoq at Fish Pond, and was like, how did you come up with the idea for the Thunderhead pack? And how did it go from inside your mind all the way to where it won Best in Show at the IFTD show? And we followed that. The engagement on that piece was over 6 minutes. And on web-based stuff, I mean, you talk to most people, it's like, yeah, you go to a website, like people on a website for even more than a minute is
so that wasn't a video, that was actually a blog post?
No, that was a full written, that was a full piece. Yeah. And that's what we're doing now in terms of how we're working with our partners. We take ad revenue based on, how many page views that we can deliver. But it's banner ads are banner ads. They're just impressions. You're not driving a huge amount of traffic, people clicking on those banners and going there. Where the partnership happens is in these kind of collabs where you're talking about the backstory about product. We don't do product reviews. Mm-hmm. We've never done a real product review we don't like them. We think they're just, a lot of them are paid and all that stuff. It's just not what we do. But but we're more than happy to sit down and really dive behind, look behind the curtain, because we think that's way more interesting.
Right.
And so there's a couple of things that we do there. So that's the biggest change, is just in terms of our engagement with our audience is much better and deeper than it was when we were just, kind of basically pre-Instagram, pre-Facebook program.
Gotcha. Well, what do you think the Chum does best, if you had to, say one thing that you guys are really, it sounds like you do a lot.
Yeah, I think what we're most proud of is, and we call it the Chum Nation. And, the people that I talk to that, I've never met them, and I get a chance to meet somebody at a show or whatever, and they find out who I am. They're like, oh my God, it's the first thing I look at when I get my cup of coffee in the morning and when I go into the office. Or we still have that core group of people. And, there's been a couple of times, I know, the guys at Gink and Gasoline were interviewed by April on Anchored one time, and they referenced the Chum as an inspiration for them when they first got started. There's, a couple of others. When I was at the show, even Orsic, who's Yukon Goes Fishing back in the day, used to do some really great viral videos, and he's working for Trout out of Denver now, doing all their media stuff. I mean, he basically, I had never met him, but we had all kinds of interaction through the Chum back in the day. And he said at the show, he goes, dude, I wouldn't even be standing here if it wasn't for you. So it's those kind of things that, I'm most proud of. And so we've had some victories on the conservation side too, where we've been able to highlight something and have been able to make some pretty rapid impact on some things. The one that comes to mind is Pike Place Market. You're familiar with it here in Seattle, where people throw the fish everybody knows about. Well, they were selling wild steelhead. And so we did a blog post, and they literally 2 days later sent me a note and said, we cry uncle. Sorry.
Really?
and they stopped.
Yep.
Literally the dust storm that blew up. So I think we still have that impact out there. I don't think we get out as in front of as many people, but Larry from, who's got Taylor Trash and, the Flyberry guys, we did a quick little post about the Flyberry thing, which I just thought was super cool. And, Midcurrent then picked it up, and everybody, a bunch of stuff. And so he got a fair amount of traction just based on kind of a little social media brush fire that started because we highlighted him.
That's cool. Who do you think who out there is do you think is most similar to what you do?
Yeah, maybe it's a good question. I generally don't. I mean, I would.
Do you read a lot of the other stuff? Do you read all the?
I don't have time.
Yeah.
I mean, I have it all in my feeds, so I see it all. Yeah. So it all comes through. I have everybody set up on Feedbin, so I have everybody else's sites. But generally, we don't. If we see it on another site, another site within our space, we generally don't post it. We let it go. Occasionally we'll do that. So we try to find, if we're just linking to other content, we try to find content that nobody else has highlighted yet that's unique.
Yep.
But I think, Chad at Hatch does a really good job. I mean, he's writing intensive. I mean, he's got a lot of outside writers that do work for him, but he's very conservation minded. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that all do kind of different variations, and we all, live together in that space. And when I started, it was Marshall at Midcurrent. It was Tom Chandler at the Trout Underground and Lee Murdoch at Flyfish Magazine. I mean, that was it. That was it.
God, isn't that crazy? In 15 years, it's and especially every year it seems like there's even on the podcasting thing. I think you guys have a new podcast, right? Or you have a new podcast?
We do. We have one. Yeah, that we're
real pure radio, right?
Radio. Our first episode is up, and we haven't kind of really blasted it out there yet. We've just told our friends, and we have it.
Yeah, I listened to it. It was good. Yeah. It's
good, right? But it's highly produced. So
it
takes. It's not something that you can. The frequency level is hard, and as you know, in any kind of space, frequency is really important. So, working on another one with Tom Sadler, who just won the Jim Range Conservation Award.
Oh, cool.
And this one's, it's more in vein of kind of what we're doing right now. So we're going to literally talk about politics, conservation, and fly fishing. And
wow. So you're going to get into politics.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go all in.
Which is one of the, they always say you're on a guide trip. You're a guide. You're on the boat. Never talk about religion or politics.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about all of it.
Nice. This is gonna be good, man.
It should be really good. And what's interesting is I'm a Kennedy Democrat. Well, I grew up as a Kennedy.
What does that mean? What does that mean exactly?
Well, I grew up on the East Coast, so I grew up in a town where John Kennedy was actually born.
So you're just so you're a Kennedy fan, the Kennedys.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was indoctrinated in it.
So what's the deal with Kennedy? What's the deal with the Kennedys? I mean, here's the thing. We're not going to get into politics here, but man, talk about heartache on a family. I mean, it seems like everybody's died. I mean, isn't that kind of a crazy?
Yeah.
What's going on over there?
Well, it's just when you live in the shadow of that family.
Yeah.
And I think across the board, I mean, it was horrible. Obviously, it started with, the assassination of Jack Kennedy.
Right.
And it just kind of progressed from there.
Jeez.
And yeah, so you wonder, then all the other side effects, indulging in, too much alcohol. I mean, just go down the list.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But, my house, it was, Jesus hung on the wall and Kennedy was right next to him, so it was that kind of thing. But so Tom has a long career kind of on the Republican side of the aisle.
Oh, really?
I'd spent a lot of time in DC as a lobbyist and so we come from differing places, but we've kind of come together based on the current political climate. Because even for a guy that comes out of that traditional Republican background, what he sees going on now is horrifying him.
Yeah.
In a big way.
No.
So we're going to talk a lot about that. And we're also going to talk about the fact that, really what it comes down to is if we really want to make the changes that we need to make as it relates to the things that are important to us as anglers, we need to vote the fuckers out.
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to come down to. And that's hard because there's a lot of people that care about clean water and public lands and all those things. But, on social issues, they may have a differing opinion. Yep. And so how do you balance those two things out? And I think that's what's going to come home to roost here pretty soon as we roll into 2020.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I was going to note that I had Tom Sadler. He was on episode 98, and we had a great conversation. We actually chatted a little bit about politics there as well. We came to an agreement on that. Hacks on Taps is a good podcast, another good podcast to check out if you want to listen to.
That's right.
A Republican and a Democrat coming together to talk about.
That's literally Hacks on Tap is basically what our podcast is, but in a fly fishing space.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect.
That's exactly. It's called the Blue Plate Special.
The Blue Plate Special.
Yeah, we have 2 episodes in the can. I got the website's being built out right now.
You have Real Pure Radio.
Yeah, and then Blue Plate Special will be its own standalone property.
Oh, so you're creating another podcast?
Yeah, the thing, we were going to put it under Real Pure Radio, but the vibe is it's completely different type. So it didn't make a sense to mix it up from a branding standpoint.
Yeah. Real Pure Radio is kind of the Moldy Chums podcast.
It's storytelling. Yeah, exactly. It's really driven. And here's the thing. It's the same thing. It's like, we were literally, we wanted to do that thing 6 years ago. And we were inspired by the Dirt Bag Diaries, which is Fitz Cahal's podcast. Yeah. And I actually spoke with Fitz because I knew him through Patagonia because Patagonia was one of his primary sponsors in the beginning. But it might still be. And I went to Fitz and said, hey, we got to do the fly fishing version of what you're doing. And literally call it the Dead Drift Diaries or the Drag Free Drifts or whatever. And Fitz was like, dude, I don't have time. I can't do it. I might be able to do an episode if you bring it, why don't you bring it to me? And so we're like, well, we're going to do our own. And then we just, we never got around to it. And
gotcha.
That was because, you heard that first episode, it was recorded. It was all recorded in Baja.
Yeah. No, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway.
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's definitely that'll be good. Well, I'll look forward to, some of the political stuff you got coming. But, getting back, I guess I did want to touch on, you mentioned Patagonia. We've talked about it a little bit. Yvon Chouinard, I'm not sure how much of a connection you had with him at the company, but I mean, what was that like? I mean, were you a conservation minded person before Patagonia? Because I mean, I'm in the just almost finishing up his book, which is, I guess, the older one, Let Your People Go Surfing, right? Or Let My People Go Surfing.
Let My People Surf.
Let My People Surf. And, I mean, it's just...
He has a follow-up coming called Let My People Make My People Buy Fleece.
Oh, really?
No,
Oh.
no, I'm kidding.
I was gonna say, but the great thing about that book is he's walking you. If you have a company, a business, I mean, a lot of it's walking you through how they do it and how you can do it, and it's just amazing. I mean, you look at Patagonia; they're ahead of the game on this conservation stuff. I mean, when you look at that, first thing is what did you learn from them, and then the second thing is why aren't more companies going all out like them?
Well, two things. One is that, I mean, they definitely walk the walk, and I learned a lot through that. I mean, I think I had that kind of conservation ethic in my DNA, but it was really kind of getting into fly fishing and ultimately working for Patagonia that really allowed that to kind of evolve. What you really learn, I think, at Patagonia is the power of grassroots advocacy and how that you can really drive change through advocacy. And, I always tell people I'm a pitchfork and torches guy. I mean, that's my feeling. Like, let's go. Like, I don't like to play the politically correct kind of program and try to walk the line and balance things out, because I think if you look at, some of the issues that I'm involved with, and you look at where we're at now, even from when I moved here to Washington, in 2002, 17 years ago, by every single measure, to me, that kind of politically expedient strategy is an abject failure. So I learned a lot about that there. I think that, Yvon was he recognized that not only was that important to him, but that, it was a viable business strategy to be a successful company because people would ultimately gravitate to that. Now, I remember when we did, I'm going to give you an example of that, when we did ethically sourced down.
Oh, yeah.
And so I managed their largest global wholesale customer, REI.
Huh.
And I went in and said, hey, we're going to do this thing where we're going to ethically source all our down, and we're going to trace it all the way back to the beginning. And I had people literally tell me customers not going to care. That's what they said.
God.
2 years later, every brand has done it.
Yep.
3 years later, everybody's doing traceable down because it's so important.
And do you think, Yvon, he knew that? He knew his customers so well that he knew that? Or do you think that's just the way he felt? He said, you know what? That's the way I feel. I don't care. I think
that's exactly right. It's the right thing to do. And so he did it. But I think that you kind of look at that and you go, all right. I mean, having the vision to recognize that was something that was important, whether it was going to be good for his business. Now, the mission's evolved. So when I was there, the mission was, to build the best product, do no unnecessary harm, and to use business to inspire solutions to the environmental crisis. Now their mission is we're in business to save the planet.
Yep.
And so I think back in those days, like all of those decisions, whether it was organic cotton, which people thought he was out of his mind when they switched over to organic cotton, when they made all of those changes back when he basically walked away from the Piton business because it wasn't good. I mean, literally completely upset the apple cart many times throughout his business career, and it's always worked out for him in the long run. Now, I think the reason why some people don't want to do it is because they're afraid of alienating some of their customer base. And if you look at posts that go up about Patagonia, like, Ross Purnell from FlyFisherman, the editor of FlyFisherman, did a post on Instagram where he screen grabbed the Patagonia website of the day of climate change action. And so Patagonia closed. Everybody was
that's right.
And so it was the website was all black, and it's had a call to action. So Ross reposted that. You should have read the hate.
Yeah.
That came out.
Well, like what? What was the?
Oh, it was literally. You go look at it. I mean, it was literally, I'll never buy another piece of Patagonia, and it's this, that, and the other thing, and all of that. I mean, it was just it was trolling. It was nasty. It was all of that. Well, Yvon doesn't care about that. He doesn't care. And he has a line, and I'll probably butcher it. And I don't know, it might be in the book, but it's like, he goes, I can make decisions that are going to piss off 50% of my customers, and the other 50% are going to love me for it.
Yep.
So, but I think there's a lot of brands that are just never in that position. And here's the thing. He's been consistent. I mean, he hasn't deviated. He just landed on the cover of Fast Company again. With another the whole thing about how he was going to change all kinds of major things, and I think the other piece around all of that, which I think people miss this point, and I'd love to make this point for people who are listening. Mm-hmm. Hang on one second. Somebody's calling me. I'm going to kill that. So, is this. Like people go, oh, I hate those guys and, Patagonia and all this. I go, well, wait a second. Take a look at this for a second. You're reading the book.
Yep.
He's an immigrant from French Canadian,
right.
Moved to Maine, ultimately started a company out of the trunk of the car, taught himself to be a blacksmith, so on and so forth. And next thing you know, he's running a company that's over $1 billion.
That's right.
It's an American success story of the highest order. And so you may disagree with his politics, but if you look at somebody that's like really literally is the credible example of the American dream, it's that guy.
But that's the crazy thing. It's hard to disagree with the politics because, I mean, think of it. In this time with everything that's going on in the environmental degradation, his politics are all about saving the environment. Like how could you disagree with that?
You can't. And, but it's easy to, the company is a bit of a, walking, talking contradiction. So, I mean, they just came out with a thing where they looked at the footprint of their trade show booth and they were kind of, it's like, oh my God, there's an environmental cost, all the product that ships across, it comes in plastic bags. Yep. And so people love to call them out like, oh my God, they look at this and they're like, wait a second, they're using all organic cotton. It's all recycled, when it comes, everything. They're almost at 100% recycled. I think their alpine shell collection is completely recycled now. You look at what they do to offset all of that. It's just nobody can compare. So it's easy to throw stones at them for that. Yeah, and he's flying all over. He admits it.
Oh yeah, he's flying.
I'm gonna go to hell, and I gotta go to I'm gonna go fish for Atlantic salmon.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm dumping a bunch of carp.
And he said it as well as anybody. I think it was in I can't remember. I think it was on another interview he did, but I think the guy, he asked him, what can I do for conservation and environmental? And he basically said, hey, I can't tell you that. You got to decide for yourself. That's your own decision you have to make. And I think that's a kind of a good way to think about it, right? Because you do. Not everybody's going to be able to be him, and you're not going to be able to freaking recycle 100% of your stuff. But if you can do something,
that's right.
That's better than nothing.
Well, and I think what's really, and I'll leave I'll end the Chenard piece of the conversation with this, which I always found, anytime you have an opportunity to see him speak or to interact with him, and I had an opportunity to interact with him a bunch over the years, and he always has something. There's always something every time he talks that he makes you kind of sit up and go, "Whoa, that's profound."
Huh.
So I think that and he's not. I wouldn't. When you see him speak in public, he's not a dynamic, charismatic speaker. And so I think sometimes it gets lost in it, but if you really listen and pay attention, I can't think of one time when I haven't been with him and that he hasn't said something that I've kind of walked away with. And in terms of what he said about, hey, you got to make your own decisions around all of that, it's very true for myself. My association with him and his brand inspired me to do a lot of things. I wouldn't be on the board of the Wild Steelhead Coalition probably if it wasn't for my time working for Patagonia.
That's right. That's right. So that's a good little conversation there. I had a question here. This is a question that came directly from one of the listeners of the podcast, and he reached out and said, "Here's something you should ask. You should ask somebody. What are your guesses?"
Okay.
But what he said was, what in fly fishing is ripe for disruption? Does anything come to mind when you think? You're in the middle of it with the chum over the years. Is there anything that needs to be changed or disrupted in fly fishing, or are we kind of on a good path right now?
Well, I think we're on a good path. It depends on, what are the parameters of that disruption?
Yeah.
So I think there's all kinds of opportunity for disruption within the business space, for sure, and how that all ultimately shakes out. You look at Kickstarter, you look at, kind of consumers being able to go to direct to manufacturers, whether it be through Amazon and those kind of things. I don't necessarily think that's disruption in a good way, but and when I mentioned that, fly fishing is kind of the petri dish of kind of business at large, right? That's like the petri dish of specialty retail. It's easy to disrupt it because it's small. I think that to me, the bigger piece is where does it go? And you look at, there was a bunch of stories that came out right when we were at the show about fly fishing is the new bird watching.
Oh yeah.
And there was, that was in the New York Times, actually.
What's that? What's that mean? The new bird watching?
Well, it was funny. Like you read it was like, oh, it's kind of like old school, activity that's being discovered by new school hipsters.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And so it was, like goat yoga got referenced. I mean, it was so it was good and bad.
Are you a yoga? You get into all that and meditation and stuff?
No, I do back yoga because I have got an old man back,
Yep.
but and it works for me, but I'm not. But so there was good and bad about that. It was fly fishing in the New York Times, but it was kind of set up this persona of the fishing that I don't necessarily think was quite accurate. It did mention the fact that it drove conservation. I think that right now, and it's hard for me to say because I see it all every day. Like I go to the fly fishing film tour. I love that thing, but I go, oh my God, I'm watching another. I've seen it. I'm seeing it again. Oh, but when somebody goes to the fly fishing film tour once a year, who's just a consumer, they go to that thing and they go, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." That's justifiably so. Right. I used to be that way, but because we're all immersed in it, we get somewhat jaded as it relates to that. So to me, where I think the disruption comes is how fly fishing becomes it evolves beyond kind of where it's at in this social media driven world we live in right now.
Right.
And I think ultimately that's, and maybe it never will.
Like away from the big fish photo.
Yeah. All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe it shouldn't go away from the big fish photo to some extent. I mean, maybe that is kind of part of the roots, but I don't know. I mean, cause I look at, where it's, what really drives the bus right now, it's, exotic travel.
Yeah.
And
that's it.
And, this high level ambassador engagement that you see, across all the brands, and it's the Yetis of the world and those guys that are throwing, high dollar volume to drive their brand and their sales through the fly fishing genre. But meanwhile, most of that stuff's not obtainable for most of us.
No,
it just isn't. I mean, you want to go to Alphonse Island and you watch a video. Yeah, I would aspire we all want to go there.
Yep.
But who can fork out 10 grand just for the week? So how does, fishing kind of fly fishing especially, how does it get back to that? You talk about home waters and, Redington, I think had a thing. It's like some of my favorite fishery is sea run cutthroat fishing that I can see right here from my house.
Yeah.
I go out there and it's like, I can do it every day if I wanted to, here's the opportunity. It's like, to me, that's ultimately what it's really all about. And I think that's a disruptive part of it, but I don't know how somebody can come in and really can disrupt it from a brand standpoint, but maybe it's there. I mean, you look at what's going on in social media at large. I mean, we're all living it right now. I mean, the category is really just, embracing podcasting now and kind of all of that. But fly fishing tends to be a little late to a late adopter when it comes to that, even in the technology side. I mean, Gore-Tex, when, Sims kind of brought Gore-Tex to fly fishing, I mean, it had been in the outdoor space for like 10 years already, soft shell. Like, oh my God, it's rocket science. Like, guys, it's been around for a bit. So
yeah, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Well, let's jump into a little bit on the Steelhead. We mentioned this at the start, and if you had to, sounds like you're heading down south for a trip, but if you look for your Steelhead being the species you do a lot of work with. I mean, let's talk about that. What is your home water? I mean, is that still the place you get out? You have a day to fish. Is that where you're heading for? Is Steelhead fishing?
Well, it's not a day trip for me. I mean, it's close. I mean, I'm 2.5 hours from the OP. Same, north. I'm on the Skagit. Eastern, Click, all of it, the high desert, Steelhead, it's all within my sphere.
It's all there.
Yeah. And I grew up, and I learned, that back in when I first got in, the trout, I learned how to fish, trout in Colorado. I moved here and it was like salmon and steelhead. It was like, whoa. The sea run cutthroat thing kind of developed over time. So, but yeah, that's kind of my thing. And, I when I first started, I'm a steelhead swing guy, 95% of the time. I'm not going to lie. I'm not adverse to throwing an indicator with a bead under it.
Yep.
But generally, I prefer to swing for steelhead. And I mean, I remember going to the shoots and fishing for 3 days and not touching a fish and going to the OP and fish like never. And then I go to BC for a trip with, when I was working for Patagonia, and like in the first 20 minutes, swung up 2 fish.
Yeah.
So that whole thing about steelhead being hard to catch, they're really more hard to find, especially here. So I stopped fishing the OP for a number of years just because it was, number one, the pressure was really high. And also, I think, you look at the soul duck, I think those fish get caught, 1.5 to 2 times every season. Huh. It's just not good for the fish.
Yeah.
And so, but the Skagit reopened last year after having a closure for, a long time, for years. And so I think I fished it 7 times.
No kidding.
And yeah, it was really great. I mean, it was, I love fishing the lower Sauk and into the Skagit. That's like kind of my favorite run. And so, but same deal, I fished it 6 times. It was really low and clear. And I connected with 1 fish.
Yeah.
That whole time.
There you go.
So it was, epic.
I was thinking, way back on episode 17, Scott Baker McGarv was on. He brought up, we talked about the Skagit, and it was closed then, I guess, right? Did it just reopen this year or the year before?
Yeah, it's been open for 2 seasons now, and I think that I think 2, maybe only. Yeah, I think it's been 2.
Yeah, 2 or what? Yeah, and I remember he was talking about it. He made that point that it had been closed for what, like 5 or 10 years or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know, at least 5. I don't remember. I don't know the numbers offhand. And also, they had to stop planting hatchery fish on it.
Oh, there you go. So it's all.
So
wild.
that was. But I think that I wouldn't say reluctantly fished it, but there was arguments to be made that they shouldn't have even opened it yet. They should have waited.
Well, and that was the point that Scott made, which is a good one. Scott, he's kind of been fly fishing forever as well, and. Mm-hmm. He was talking about some other rivers too, but he made the point there that, the problem with closing it down is, it might need to be closed down, but the problem is people forget about it after a number of years. He made the point, like, if it's closed down, people just don't fish it. If you're not fishing it, you're not connected with it. So I think opening it up, there's an argument for opening it up, even if, he was saying even open it up and just fish without even hooks. Just let people go out there and have fish just nibble on your feathers.
Well, I think there's also arguments to be made for, you look at, fishing for Atlantic salmon and, up in the Canadian Maritimes, it's like it's a draw. Like you just don't walk on those rivers. And so, I think ultimately, if you look at the runs that are going on here, at some point you would think that you're going to have to, if you're going to open it, you have to have limited entry at some point. So at that point, nobody wants to hear that. And my thing is I would love to be able to take home a big wild steelhead and throw it on my Traeger and eat it, but that's just not a reality right now.
No.
And so, they get into, now you get all the subset of arguments about hatcheries and all of those kind of things. I think the thing on this, you look at the thing on the Skagit was it's shifting baselines. So, it got 9,000 fish back, and so now we need to open it. And now this year they're going, well, I might only get 6,000 fish, but we're still going to open it.
Right.
It's like, back in the 50s, that thing was carrying, 30,000 fish.
Yeah.
And so everybody goes, oh, yeah, that fish can only support, that river can only support 15,000 fish. And you're going, yeah, no, guys, no. Mm-hmm. Like, why are we, why are we not letting this thing rebound? But the big thing about it was it took some pressure off the OP.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of guys, I can go here and, connect to a Skagit fish, and the runs are pretty good. And if you do it all right, and it keeps people from going out and pounding on the OP.
Okay, so is the OP, just a madhouse down there?
Well, there was a couple of years where it was just insanity, just crazy.
No
and
kidding.
And here's the other thing: there's no limited entry from out of state guides.
Yeah. Well, and that's the crazy thing, because even the Deschutes you mentioned, the Deschutes, it has a limited entry, there's a limited entry of river passes. So, you can walk in and fish, but if you're there's a limited number of people in the summer season that can go on that river.
And we tried to, as well, Silly Coalition, we pushed the rule change for, limiting, certain areas of rivers where you can't fish out of the boat.
Yeah.
And all of that. I mean, the biggest steelhead I ever hooked and lost, I hooked out of a raft with a bead in a corner that I could have never, ever even got close to that fish swinging a fly. The only reason I could do it because I was fishing out of the raft, and fish was resting in this spot. It was a holding spot, and I happened to connect with it while it was sitting there waiting. And those fish need refuge. They need a place where they can rest. And when you fish out of the boat, you can cover all of that water. So that's the argument. And we got some limits. I mean, it was small. It was like 6 or 8 miles of river that came off. There was more. The Deschutes, same thing. You can't fish out of the boat.
Yep.
But it's people, it's different rivers and it's, different set of circumstances. I mean, I totally understand that. And we're dealing with people's livelihoods and all that stuff. And if you got everybody out of the boat, everybody's congested into certain spots and so on and so forth. But, the swing only, that I'm primarily a swing only guy now, and I'm not going to catch as many fish, but I'm going to probably have less impact on the fishery ultimately because I'm not going to catch as many fish. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you look at, and this is the discussion we have, I mean, just in terms of steelhead in general. You look at, I mean, the dust up about salmon and orcas here. Oh yeah. An orca has a calf die and pushes it around for 17 days on the surface while it's dead, and the whole world just the lights on fire because we've got to do something to save the orcas, which means we got to do something around salmon. It's like, well, you guys are forgetting. Well, it's steelhead too, right? And it is the state fish. And all of that.
Steelhead is the state fish.
Still is the state fish in Washington.
Well, I think steelhead. I think when people say salmon, I always think it's just steelhead salmon or even salmon. It's it's like everything. If you
anadromous.
Say, it's anadromous. Yeah. If you say salmon, you're basically talking about anadromous fish. Yeah.
But it's funny. But you look at people give money to save polar bears, but they how do you motivate somebody that living in Colorado that writes a check to the Sierra Club or somebody because they want to save some other charismatic megafauna. But the only people that are really focused on trying to protect steelhead are the people that fish for them.
That's right.
So there's no real visibility as it relates to that. So how do you kind of get people? And you look at steelhead run, it's 3% of historic. 3%.
Yep.
And so, and everybody's like, well, it's habitat. It's not, it's like the 4 H's, habitat, hydro, hatcheries, harvest, so on and so forth. But it's just one of those things where it's, you've got to be able to figure out a way to kind of motivate some people to kind of figure out hey, this is the reason why you should care about this.
Yeah. What is the Wild Steelhead Coalition? What are they focusing on?
Well, so we're a volunteer organization. We don't have a paid staff. So it's basically a board run. We have a couple of outside contractors that do a lot of our social media, do a lot of our campaign stuff. So we're generally campaign focused. We're super nimble. So we cover a lot of different things. So we're working on, we have a Lyle Creek project, which is a side creek up on the Skagit that used to be incredible steelhead spawning habitat that over time was, allowed to basically through agriculture and other things was channelized and it wasn't its natural course disappeared, and we're restoring that. So we're doing habitat work there, and we also do we work on campaign driven stuff. So we did literally a wild steelhead campaign. I don't remember what it was, to try to basically raise awareness around the fish and why people should care about them. And this is what's happening. And Shane Anderson, who's a great filmmaker, has done some really great conservation films, did a bunch of shorts for us and interviewed some of the old timers. And so we work on that stuff. We literally are raising money to buy a piece of property on the Grand Ronde right now.
Oh, cool.
So it's a piece of private property that they wanted to sell, but it had public access, and the fear was that if it sold to somebody that closed it off. So we've partnered up with some of the inland fly fishing groups, and we've raised the money, and it's going to get done.
Perfect.
So we have our fingers in a lot of different pies, and it's one of the things we can do because we're kind of a small, nimble group, and So it's good. It's really
That's
good.
Cool. So you're doing a little bit of that, and then the Moldy Chum is you're spending 80% of your time on that, or what is your week? What does your week look like? I mean, what do you do if you take your typical week? Are you a 9 to 5 sort of thing, or how does that look?
It's like it's literally 8:30 probably to 4:30 kind of every day, and I'm scrubbing through my daily feeds looking for content. I'm on the phone talking to people. It's funny, since I mean, it is my job, but when I left my last job, I was working.
What was your last job?
I was working for Thule, the roof rack company.
Oh yeah.
I started in the outdoor business with Yakima Rack. So
cool. When
I left Patagonia, I went to Thule because I was kind of going back to my roots, and I wanted to get out of the rag business and go back to hard goods. Huh. And so it's a long story, but when I kind of said, I'm going to commit kind of doing this thing instead. Ultimately, and those guys helped me make the decision. They wanted to put their resources elsewhere. So it's like I'm busier now than I was when I was working that beat.
Huh.
So like I talk to a ton of people, networking and working on all. It's like, and right now I'm focused on following up from trade show on advertising proposals that I out to everybody.
So is that what you did? You kind of had some proposals, and you're always kind of chasing down sponsorships and things like that.
Yeah, it's all about trying to keep the funnel full as best you can.
Yeah.
And some stuff comes in over the bottom. I mean, we have good long-term working relationships with the Farbank Group in Patagonia and the Fly Fishing Film Tour guys. I mean, there's people that generally are perennial advertisers and have been for a while. It's trying to get some of those new ones to come in that kind of help round out the program. So
gotcha. So if somebody wanted to advertise with you, they could just pay money for a banner ad, or how else?
It depends on, it's all based on CPM, views, and it's kind of classical thing, but really it's more important about what else can we do to help support. We love taking people's money, but we don't end there. We like, how else can we support the business? And if they want to write the content and provide it, we provide the platform for that. And then if they want us to do it, we work out a way that we can balance that out with whatever ad buys they're making.
Cool. Do you know what your blog post is, the most popular blog post over the years?
That's a really good question. It'd be a hard one to judge by, just basically because we've been on 3 different platforms. But I would we used to do these caption contests. And I would say, like, just based on engagement, just in terms of when we ran a couple of caption contests that had hundreds and hundreds of people like comment as entries. So probably on paper, those were probably the biggest, and they were just completely crazy.
So how did the caption thing work? They throw it on a photo?
You just put a picture up and said, hey, we need to caption this thing.
Right.
So we had a guy that was literally naked on top of a dead whale on the beach.
Jeez. Nice.
And people just like, how do you caption that? Trust me, they managed just fine.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Some of it was completely not reprintable.
Yeah.
But others were really brilliant. And that's the one thing I will say, when you get the trolls out and they kind of come up with knives out, like you're overmatched. They're really good at it. And like the worst thing you can do is to try to engage on that.
Them,
You just got to kind of let it go.
Yeah.
So, and when people used to get bummed out at like we would post something about somebody in the industry and somebody would make a nasty comment about it, we would always like, oh my God, I would get emails and phone calls, and like my response was, don't read the comments.
Yep.
It's like, why are you working yourself up? It's like, just get over it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I know you can cast just fine.
So the Moldy Chum. So how does it? We talked a little bit about some of the different. It seems like you look out there now. There's a bunch of content obviously out there, and not just blah blah. I mean, how do you still stand out these days? I mean, you've got your core. Do you have a bunch of email list of people? I mean, where are your people? And then how do you stand out?
No, we don't. I think it's just people can count on. I think 2 things. I mean, we feel like we still are somewhat the soul of fly fishing as it related to when we kind of came on the scene. And So I think people still appreciate that. That's like where they go to kind of get
What about
their
the
dose
new person? What about when you get somebody brand new that's searching for some random topic and all of a sudden your thing pops up? I mean, how does that person come into your community?
Well, I think it's just what everybody's blown away with is just the sheer volume of content that we share with people. And so once people experience that and look at that, they just know they can just come every day or once a week. Now, here's the thing. I have never gone down like the hardcore search engine optimization. We don't have an email newsletter, although I am planning on putting one together starting at the first of the year.
Really? So no email newsletter.
No, we don't. We trust me. It's like it's 101 for social media to have a newsletter.
Well, and some online marketers will say, your email list is your most important thing,
We don't have an email list.
There you go.
We don't want an email list.
Yep.
We don't require it. Now we've gathered emails for our partners.
Right. Oh, you have.
We do a contest where we gather emails. That's like it's up front. Like, hey, and if you let us, like, if you check the box and say you have the right to email me later, not us, but the brand, you get a second entry.
Oh, there you go.
And we do we capture a lot of emails, but we don't personally.
Yeah.
We don't. I mean, we could go back and probably look at them, but that's just not our deal. We don't. That's not and I think to some extent, we're going to go back to that, and well, we're not going to go back to it, but we are going to do an email newsletter. If somebody wants to get all their chum in their inbox from 1 week, you can.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But
that would be handy.
I want people to come to the site.
Well, and I think that's the good thing about the email list thing is that what you just made the point is that email list is great if you're serving them, right? I mean, people want if you're sending out an email every week that has a summarized version of what you guys do and is easier for people. I mean, they would love that, right? I mean, I would love that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would help our overall. And there's a couple of people that do really good. Like I have a couple that I follow, just a couple, and I get a fair amount of content through them. So Watershed Watch out of BC, Aaron Hill's group, that group, solid group up in British Columbia, doing really good work. I mean, those guys they kind of go out and look at the world at large and share content that's relative to the work that they do up there. So it's generally salmon and steelhead focused, offshore fishery stuff. So those guys do a good job. I have one that's all Columbia River based, Columbia Basin Bulletin that I subscribe to that one. So I pay for a subscription and I get an email every week that sends me links to all the news that's kind of happening in the Columbia River Basin. And some of that news, then I can go look at it elsewhere because it's a subscription-based thing, but it gives me the opportunity to go search the web and dive into some of those stories that they've highlighted. And then I can kind of take those stories and kind of tweak them in my view and share them. So that's one of the ways that I get content. So that's, cool. We're going to go there.
Yeah.
And then at some point, if somebody wants to, maybe, I mean, I've had offers to buy me over the years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
Just not a high enough price tag for you.
Yeah. So if you looked at that's the amazing thing. I mean, if you consider, and there's many times over the years where I've said, I got to just quit this thing.
Oh, no kidding.
So
take me to one of those moments where you said you thought you might have to quit it.
Well, two things. One is just you think about how much of my life I'd get back. So this is before I made it my job. Now that I'm doing it during the day, it's not as much of an impact. But before I was doing it on my own time, and it had an impact on everything. My family, when I'm on vacation, all of that. I mean, I'll be posting from Mexico.
Right. You did that for 14 years, or how many years you did it for?
Since 2005.
Since 2005, you were doing that all on the side.
All on the side.
And at any point, so there were some points where you just said, you know what, I'm spending freaking 6 hours today.
I'm just going to walk away from it.
Yeah. And what kept you from walking away?
It's like a drug.
Yeah. What do you? I mean, like a drug. What is the most? I mean, I know kind of from my perspective. I mean, but what is that thing? What do you love most? What keeps you going?
Well, I'm a relationship guy, a network guy.
Yeah.
And those moments that I had at that show with Scott from Vitavu, brought me and Bart from Sims over. He worked with Bart at Patagonia, brought us over to the booth, and he had two artists, and he had a fly wallet that was blank, and he said, 10 years ago, you came to me at the Linwood show and you had a conversation, and you introduced me to this guy, and it really helped me where I'm at. That's the stuff that keeps me going.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that keeps me going. And I've certainly ruffled some feathers along the way.
Yep.
But, hopefully, the other piece of it is I feel like in some small way, we've made a difference for people who've, a couple of people in this industry have been able to create careers, help support their direction and their careers. And I also think on the conservation side, we raise awareness. I mean, I've been to DC a couple of times on, hill walks, and, I go in and I sit down with a legislative aide and I tell them who I am. And it's like, I own a multimedia website, and my readers care about this stuff. And it's important to me. And the people that advertise with me care about this because it's their business. Mm-hmm. So I've been able to leverage that as it relates to, kind of also doing good work. So that's why I stick with it.
Gotcha.
Because if you did it as a dollar and cents thing over the years, there's not enough money in the world.
No, I love hearing your perspective, because I've interviewed a bunch of people now, but you've been around for, a good chunk of time here, in the online stuff, and hearing your perspective, it's similar. I think, the joke we've had on this is that people, have said, there's no money in fly fishing, no money to be made. And we've said that a bunch of times, but hearing your story, the fact that you're not even, weren't focused on that, and now you're here, it's your full-time work. I mean, that's a success story.
Yeah. And I think ultimately it'll lead to some other things. I think that through this, as I can provide a platform for people to, I can provide a voice. Yeah. And so there's value in that. And you could help. So people are coming in, they want to do good work, they want to do conservation-minded work. You can help lift them up to get them to a point where they can succeed. Well, there's that. And then, I get call from, the guys at the guys and gals at TU actually about, suction dredge mining. And, we go, okay, right. They send me the assets, and we focus on it, and we do our part. I mean, I posted, a little Instagram link that the Patagonia guys sent out about their new film Artificial that's now available for, you can watch the whole thing on YouTube now, the full movie. And I put a link to the film.
Is the full movie, so that's actually you can just watch it right now?
You can go to YouTube and watch it right now.
Oh, good. I'll put it.
It's been up for a week, and it's already has over 1 million views.
Sweet, I didn't realize that. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah. And so I did one Instagram post and just said, hey, it's available, and if you want to watch it, there's a link up in the profile.
Yep.
Classic. My profile views in the last 7 days are over 700.
Yep.
So, we did our little part there in terms of driving people to that and engaging some stuff in one small way. So it's rewarding in that respect, for sure.
What do you, at the end of the day, when we're gone here and the moldy chum, well, this is a whole other side. Do you know the global fly fisher? Martin?
I do know. I know of him for sure.
Martin.
Yeah.
I interviewed him. Well, when I first got started on this, in the fly fishing stuff, the online space, I've kind of had two little things here, but it was way back in 2015, and I reached out to him because he was kind of out there, right? The global fly fisher, and he helped me just do one of my first blog posts.
Yeah.
And anyways, I interviewed him, and we just had this great conversation. But it's just, I don't know. It's interesting to hear people that have been in it, and then to look at what's going to happen in, say, 50 years, like all this content you have, what's going to happen? Is it just going to disappear when you kick the bucket?
I think it'll live forever somewhere for sure. I'll probably figure out a way, but theoretically, it depends on, the directions that I leave. But if somebody's playing the WordPress.
Here's a good example. I don't know if you've heard of Westfly, but Scott Richmond's site, he had a site that was called Westfly. I think it was Westfly.
Oh, I remember it well.
Yeah, Westfly. Well, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he closed it down actually a few days ago.
Well, here's the amazing thing, Dave. I've got, I have a tab. I haven't done this blog post yet. So back in the early blog days, it was all about somebody had a blog and they reached out to you and said, hey, would you put a link to me?
Posting, right? A link, yep.
Right, and you had the blog roll on the side of the page. and it was everybody else that you kind of was
Yep.
the community. So over the years, I saved all these links to all these like that. There were ones I was going to post and call out. Well, that kind of went away. Like that whole dynamic doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
Like you don't do that. But I still have a folder saved with all of a bunch of them, and some of them you go to and they don't even exist anymore. Like
No.
the website doesn't exist, but others are still there.
Yeah.
But you can look and see when they did their last post.
Oh, right.
And it's crazy.
What is it? What is it? What are
Oh,
they?
it's just all over the place. But it's just I mean, there's got to be. Well, here, hang on one second.
Yeah. How many
I
sites?
can do it. Well, here, I'll tell you right now.
yeah.
Hang on.
This is interesting.
Yeah, hang on. Let me go to my bookmark manager,
Yeah. Good.
and I'll tell you how many. Hang
Cool.
on one. Here we go. Fish blogs. You ready for this?
Yeah. Oh, wait,
You
let
know,
me guess. So this is fish blogs over the last 15 years that you've.
Well, these are just ones that I was going to do at the time. I was going to post a link to them.
And these are all different fish blogs.
Yeah, I mean, I probably posted hundreds of them over the years when it was going on. These are the ones that I just never got to.
Oh, never got to.
And never deleted them.
Damn, never got to. Yeah, what is the number?
Hang on one second. Oh, there's at least 40 or 50 of them.
Yeah, 40 or 50 sites that you totally
that are just still here.
Yeah.
Like,
And-
one bug is fake, Pilecast.
Oh,
Some of them may still be live,
Yeah. Well,
but
and
most of them are not. Flybox Rant, Fontanellis Rising, Rumble on the River, Tenkara, and the Art of Bothering Fish. I mean, at some point, I'm going to do a whole post that just says,
yeah, you got to throw those names out there. Fontanellis Rising is pretty sweet.
suck my yeah, here it is. Suck my fly blog. Nope. Gone.
No, that one's not good.
Dead. Let's see. How about, who's this guy? This is Hopper Fishing. It's the Hopper Talk blog.
Oh, the Hopper Talk.
Last one was November 16th of 2015.
There you go. All hoppers all the time.
That's right. Mini Chubby is the last one they posted.
Mini Chubby. See, there's
And they had the hopperstore.com. And it was literally, there's like the fuzzy foam grand hopper tutorial, the improved thunder thighs hopper tutorial.
So
it's
do you think there was so there are, I mean, you're looking at this graveyard of, you were
That's
probably
right.
there when these things were going. I mean, you lasted, these other ones did. I mean, what do you think is what keeps the people going? The you versus those ones that never keep it going?
That's exactly right. And I always say this. It's like, I
Yeah.
see them online, like, oh man, check these guys. I was like, yeah, I've seen them come. I've seen them go.
That's crazy.
What's really funny is you go to this one, you look at the blog roll. Like I'm on Hopper Fishing right now. You look at you go to the site and you go, there's the blog roll. Like it's like jazz and fly fishing, lamooshing.
What?
Like lamooshing's been around for a while. The Trout Underground. The Trout Underground hasn't been around for 10 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, some old
fun.
stuff. Well, that was my point on the Westfly, is that Scott Richmond had a resource at Westfly, and I'm going to chat with him here pretty soon. But I guess he just turned it off, and all that content, which is probably some amazing content, is it just gone now?
I would assume it still lives on whatever platform he was
Well,
using.
but if you're not paying for your hosting, you're not gonna.
It's gone.
That's what I'm saying. So it's just like shit, man. I mean, can't we like grab that and throw it onto somebody else's site, or just keep it? You know what I mean?
You would think.
Yeah. So, anyways, it
has value.
I'm gonna have a chat with Scott and see if. But that was a conversation I had with Martin Jorgensen. As I said the same thing. It was a pretty deep conversation because he has MS and he's in a wheelchair now, and he's still and I didn't even realize that. But he, his life is different. And he made the point. Well, we got a whole conversation, but not only did he say, get out and do what you want to do now because you never know with life, but but that was the point we talked about. Is just on his stuff, man. He's got like 3,000 posts out there.
That's right.
Blog posts, and like it'd suck to lose all that. So anyway,
It would. Well, and what was funny too was remember when Tumblr kind of appeared.
Oh yeah.
So like I'm looking at some of these sites right now, like Kids with Sticks. That was somebody, Fly Fishing Central Oregon. It's a Tumblr site. Last blog post was February 16th of 2015.
15, yeah.
And it's like that stuff will never go away.
Oh, it won't.
No, Tumblr, unless you kill the page, it's going to live forever.
Oh, so Tumblr is just it was a free deal.
That's right. And it's just pictures. I mean, it's beautiful photography. And you look at the notes, like here's a picture somebody posted. 460 notes attached to it.
Yeah.
Tumblr.
No kidding.
That's engagement.
It's impressive.
Yeah. Here, I'll give you a number here real quick.
Yeah.
Hang on 1 second. I'm just going to go to my Chum dashboard. So this is just blog posts since we switched to the WordPress platform.
All right.
Which is, I'm trying to remember what that was. I can tell you what it was. But we have published 5,299 blog posts.
Holy crap. So
just on the WordPress site.
So, and that's these 3 or 4 a day.
So let me flip the date. So we flipped the site officially on 11. No, that's not right. Hang on. That's weird. Hang on. Let me go down. The dates are reversed. I'm trying to look at I'm trying to flip the dates around. 1/1 of 2016.
Oh, 2016. Yeah, 1/1. So almost to 4 years.
Yeah, just about.
Do you have any blog posts out there that are kind of the, here epic post of here are the, 50 steps to do XYZ? Do you have anything like that just really is like an epic post, or is it more of your stuff shorter?
Well, it's generally short. I mean, we have some long ones. That Inside the Mind stuff, the Free the Chum. We have another series called Free the Chum, which is when we write about when we go places. And so it's all, one was, but we don't generally do the, here's how, we don't do how-tos either. I mean, we post a lot of fly tying, like one of the comments I get from people when I post, I get a cool fly tying video from YouTube and I post it for somebody. I always get comments from people that say, hey, we want more of that,
Yeah.
So, but we leave that to the people that are way better at that stuff than we are,
Yeah.
So
yep.
It's funny though. I am going to do my first product review.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was funny because it was a product that I got that I didn't want to like. Like I didn't think I was going to like it. Yeah. I got it. And I think I was going to like it. And so now I'm like, and then I liked it a lot. And so that's going to be the vibe. It's
can you talk about or just mention what?
Yeah, it's the Yanga. That's the Yanga, the Yeti Panga waterproof backpack.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah. I've had a couple. I was asking the question for a while on here, like what's your go-to piece of gear? That one came up, or it was some type of that Yeti, whatever it was. But people love the Yeti.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's crazy, right? It's classic. It's an amazing brand.
Yeah.
It just came out with a book today.
Oh, no kidding. And they have a podcast. What's his name? Van Zandt is doing their podcast.
They got a bunch of
Oh, they do. They have a bunch of podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. So Van Zandt's doing it. They have some other genres they're doing, but they just came out with a book about tarpon.
Nice.
Yeah. It features David, what's his name? Magnum, the tarpon.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm not totally sure, but
it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous book. Big, a coffee table. It's their first book. So kind of taking a page from the Patagonia template, because Patagonia has a whole book division.
Oh yeah, they do. That's right. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it should be a good one. Because it's
nice.
Going to be like, I didn't want to like this product, but here's why I like it so much.
Well, and here's my product. This is a tiny little product, but talk about REI. I definitely have got some products from REI, but wool fingerless gloves. I was just thinking about this today because I was I was trying to write a little short post for the people that are going on this Steelhead trip, and some of them are beginners, and they're asking, what do I need to take on a trip? So I was just going through and writing a little post to be like, all right, here's what you need for your first winter Steelhead trip, and one of them is like fingerless wool gloves. I mean, if I had to pick one thing that I would never forget on a Steelhead trip for winter Steelhead, it is that, because I mean, it's a lifesaver, right? And
absolutely.
REI has these wool fingerless gloves. They're only like $10, but I buy a few pair every year, and I just love them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to have them. I can't remember, there was a brand, a European brand I used to get. I used to get the socks too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, those kind of, to me, that's the kind of product stuff that's more interesting to me. To me, I'm more about gadgets and stuff. I mean, you should see the gadgets I'm bringing to Mexico.
Oh yeah.
I've got a GoPro, the brand new GoPro Hero Max, the 360 camera.
Oh wow.
I've got waterproof housings for my phone.
Yep.
It's crazy. I'm bringing my drones.
Nice.
I mean, you look at that, it's like that's what drives all of this.
Didn't you have a post out there that said something about derogatory on drones, like everybody's got a drone?
Well, it was like drones are like hemorrhoids.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks to the new DJI Mini, every asshole's gonna have one.
There you go.
Yeah, $399.
Damn. For a badass drone.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so anybody with 400, and it's under 250 grams or whatever, so it comes in at 249, which is 1 gram under the FAA licensing requirement.
You can go up as high as you want.
Well, it's not so much high, but you don't have to have like the registration number on it or any of that.
Or all the affiliation.
Yeah, well, you can't really hurt anybody with it.
No,
it doesn't weigh enough.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you can still take a video over somebody's house, though, right?
You could, sure.
Yeah. Which is bizarre. Well, hey, Brian, I think we're about an hour and a half into this, so
right? I'm gonna kind of.
I know we can definitely keep BS here. I'm gonna let you get out. I'm gonna let you get out of here. But did you have anything else on the on the Chum you want to mention that we didn't? Anything important? Anything maybe in the next 6 to 12 months? I kind of asked that question a lot. But anything you want to bring up we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing probably is going to be, the podcast for us. Our goal is to do 10 episodes next year. This first episode that's out, it's called Chasing Shadows. That's really going to be a focus for us. I think you're going to probably see quite a bit more now that I'm kind of doing it as the full-time gig. You're going to see a lot more of that kind of inside the mind type content where, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper, and you're going to continue to see, us kind of poke fun in a fun way. But I mean, we're going to stay the course. I mean, we might do some light, upgrades to the site, might tweak the look and feel a little bit because it's getting to be, you said, for almost 4 years. So we might want to tweak the look a little bit and change it at some point. But we're probably going to stay the course. And newsletter, watch for that if people are interested. And if you've never checked us out, please check us out.
Cool.
You know where to find us. Find us in the show notes. Right?
That's right. Yeah. MoldyChum.com. I'll have a link to your site and some of this other stuff we talked about. And it's been fun, Brian. It was fun to connecting with you for a little bit of IFTD and chatting. That was an impression I got when I first read into you there, that you definitely, kind of, it seems like you kind of do things your own way. You've kind of got like you said, you come out with the pitchfork and stuff. I think that's what. I think people, just like you said, 50-50, right? People love you and hate you for it, probably.
Yeah, for sure. And and it's, it's like there's never any malice in any of it, and it's like just try to remind everybody of that. And it's like it's just fly fishing, but
exactly.
I think more importantly, next time you're up in Seattle, let's go fishing.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I'm gonna be we're not too far away, so let's keep in touch, and until we see you on the river, I'll catch you then.
Yeah. Okay, man.
All right, Brian.
Awesome.
All right. See you, man.
Okay. See ya. Take care.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes, all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/112. I'm looking for people interested in heading out to Alaska this coming summer. It'd be great to get out on the water with you and target some big fish. Go to wetflyswing.com/AK to get more info and find out if this trip is right for you. I want to thank you again and let you know I appreciate the support of the podcast. Definitely couldn't do everything we've been doing without your support, so I appreciate that. Looking forward to maybe catching up with you soon on the river or online.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.